Hello and welcome to episode 13 of Off the Bandstand. My name is Christian Wiggs. I am your host. Today's episode is Altin Sencalar, who is a really great jazz bone player. He was here in Austin at UT whenever he was doing his bachelor's degree, and then moved up a few years ago to Michigan to pursue a master's degree there at Michigan State, and then came back home to us and has been making the Austin jazz scene super proud the whole time that he's been here, and then especially once he's come back. I mean, his playing has just evolved in such amazing ways, and it's very evident in the projects that he's putting out. Just here in 2020, in January, he put out a record which is called Realization under the Sencalar and Glassman Quintet with Chris Glassman, another bone player that he met up in Michigan, and then they just decided to put together a dual band leader record with two bone players, which we talk about in the episode is not super common, but it works and it's super tasteful, and the record has been getting a lot of acclaim nationwide that again, it's just making the Austin scene proud. So let's get into this episode as quickly as possible. We talk about the importance of critique and mentorship. We talk about the vast amount of styles that are under the umbrella of our discipline of jazz music, and how we should do our due diligence to understand each one of those and how it plays together to make our genre as a whole. And we talk about a particularly nightmarish gig where the sound technician was maybe a little more than checked out for the evening under some, certain substances. So it's a real fun story at the end, so make sure to stick around for that. And then at the end, there's also a video of another thing that they have been releasing, the Sencalar and Glassman Quintet, which is the first installment of the Solitude sessions. And this tune is the tune Bolivia, and this is something that they just took it upon themselves, like a lot of people are doing right now, to keep the music alive, to keep the recordings flowing in the middle of the pandemic. Again, he is wasting no time, and they are just really getting after it. And then the thing that we want to make sure to plug is that tomorrow he is releasing a single that features Luther Allison, Alex Brown, and Zachary Adelman, which is called Reimagined, which Altin also talks about in this episode, so I won't give it away, but he talks a little bit at the end about kind of what the title of that tune means to him and what he had envisioned whenever he wanted to release this following his first record back in 2017, I believe it was, which is called Introducing Altin Sencalar. So make sure to keep out an eye for Reimagined, which comes out tomorrow on September 25th. And then, while we're plugging other people's records too, I wanted to make sure to plug a really killing guitar player in town. His name is Tommy Howard. Everyone who's in the Austin jazz scene knows him and loves him and says that he's one of the nicest guys, one of the best hangs, and one of the best guitar players in town. So in 2017, he released an album which is called Storybook, and it's a trio record with a super stacked band. It's got Daniel Litdu Durham on bass, and it has Brandon Guerra on drums, and it really has kind of a flair for exactly like the title of the album alludes to, which is Storybook. It's very much a storytelling kind of vibe, and if you go over to Tommy's website, which we've put below, you can check out more of him actually talking about each one of the tunes and how that plays together to make this beautiful narrative about himself and what he wanted to say as a composer and as an arranger, and all of the life experiences that have influenced those tracks. So make sure to go and support that if you can. It's on all of the major streaming platforms, and we'll put a link as well to all of his website and everything if you want to reach out and get more information about that. So also, speaking of things that we should be plugging, the Monk shows. We plug them every week about what's kind of coming up in the next week or two. And so happening right now, so maybe pause this and go run over and check this out, is a really special night. It's Monk's 4th anniversary. A beautiful idea, a really amazing idea of a pop-up jazz club that is by jazz musicians for jazz musicians in a specific listening room where it's just about the music. It's an incredible concept, and we're really grateful to Colin Shook for curating this and keeping this alive, not only in the past 4 years, but especially making it to where it's kind of, it's been a pop-up, but now there's a brick and mortar during the pandemic, and that's been a really beautiful sense sentiment and keeping us all going and keeping us entertained with being able to see everybody in the scene every week. So the 4th anniversary is tonight. It features the Colin Shook Trio, which is Colin, Sam Pankey, and Daniel Dufour, his classic Essential Trio. And then there's special guests like Andre Hayward, Elias Haslanger, Mike Saylors, amazing. All these guys are amazing. And Adrian Ruiz. A lot of these guys have been guests of the podcast already, or hopefully will be in the future with Elias and Andre. And then on September 27th, is Jaron Marshall's and the Collective, Jaron Marshall and the Collective. Sorry, let me get that a little bit better. On September 27th, all of these shows are at 7:30 p.m. So make sure to check in right then at 7:30 so you can catch those. But if for any reason you can't, they are going to be available online, almost immediately. I think he puts them up the following morning, so you can go and check it out then. And then on September 30th, also coming back to Altin, Altin and Matt Maldonado, a really amazing jazz sax player, and I shouldn't even just limit him to jazz. I mean, Matt can play anything. Are doing a quintet hit with, it features Altin Sencalar, Matt Maldonado, Ben Iram, Alex Brown, and Daniel Dufour. Another super stacked band. So make sure to go and check that out as well. If you have any suggestions of jazz records that you've been listening to and you want us to plug that on this show, or you have a jazz record, make sure to just send them on a DM through like Instagram or shoot me a Facebook message or things like that. And we'll make sure to keep supporting everybody in the scene. That's what this whole thing is about, keeping us connected and supporting one another. So anyways, let's get into today's episode. This is episode 13, Altin Sencalar. This is Off the Bandstand. On the Mary Hardin Baylor gig, man.
And yeah, it's great. I'm actually from that area originally because I grew up in Temple. I've been around UMHB for at least 15 years. I like they used to like do like recruitment tours of like my high school and whatnot, but. Yeah, it was great to like get hired on there. I honestly didn't think I was going to get it because it's a smaller college, but like they have like 4 doctoral programs.
Oh,
so,
cool.
Yeah, it's a private university. That's the thing. Like they actually have they have an EDD, which is an education doctorate, and they have it in nursing education. They have it in, I think, business education, then they also have K through 12 education, and then higher ed education. So like dean school, basically.
Oh, cool.
And then they also have like doctorates. I believe they have a doctorate of business, just like straight, DBA, not like a emphasis on business education. And then they have like some like other things, but like those two really struck me. Oh, they have like I guess they have like a formal theology degree as well because it's like a Christian university.
Right. Yeah.
But no, it's great working there. I mean, my colleagues are fantastic. My department head he's great. Like so his name is Jonathan Gary. He's a vocalist, and he's just like a super thorough person. He doesn't have like any kind of like second agenda. Like he's just a very good-hearted person and actually he like the first day he like pulled me in and I was like, oh man, here we go. And I was like, all right, like I'm only here for 1 year. That's what I'm going to hear. We hired you because, we see that you've like toured with your own groups as well as made CDs and whatnot. And like, we want you to like implement like the professional development side into our jazz ensemble. Cause they don't have a jazz program, but they have a jazz ensemble. And he was like, the potential for like outside performances is very high, you know, so we can definitely, you know, have you set something up whenever you feel ready. I was like, oh, wow. And he was like, and, you know, don't worry about, you know, like, if people can afford to go, that's covered. I was like, okay.
Wow, man, that's really great. And that's also like a testament too of like, I think sometimes we kind of get lost in the weeds of like why we're making records too, right? Because like you could spend a year plus, you know, writing, recording, getting it like fully produced with mixing, mastering and everything. And then you release it on Spotify, you might get like a sharp uptick in listeners from that first initial listen. And it like starts to go down. And then you're like, well, shit, why did I spend all this time making this record? But it's really just like building that catalog. So that way, like people don't even need to listen to it necessarily for it to like have effects, right? Because people were just like, yeah, you put out records. Like that's.
Yeah. And you know, the other thing is like playing in a studio versus playing on a live sound gig, like that's a completely different two completely different ball games. And,
Yeah.
and you know, like the other thing is like, there's a different kind of fatigue in the studio as compared to like a fatigue on a live gig.
Dude, for sure.
You know, I think a lot of times, like, you know, we like have like these phenomenal gigs, but like they're phenomenal because of like the vibe on the gig, but like they're phenomenal because you're next to each other and people can see that vibe. Cause you know, a lot of times like people listen with their eyes.
Right.
And like, you know, sometimes it doesn't translate onto the record. And like, that's like really hard to do because that's whenever you need a objective opinion or maybe somebody not invested, but like somebody who's not as involved in your group periodically.
Yeah. Where they can just like kind of sit in, like just having like a designated producer, right? Who like knows what the band sounds like regularly, but is far enough removed to where they can be objective about the takes and whether or not it feels manufactured.
Exactly. And you know, that's something that I learned between record 1 and record 2.
Meaning introducing Altin Sencalar and then realization.
Yeah. I mean, I learned that, and it wasn't like a hard lesson. It was just like, you know, number one, having like the resources, which is like another thing that you gain from session number 1. Like,
yeah.
You know, like in my very first session, I basically learned everything about post recording. So, you know, like I learned about ISRCs, I learned about catalog numbers, I learned about the, you know, the DDDs or the DAAs or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or even like the semantics of like, well, are we going to do, you know, introducing comma Altin Sencalar, or are we going to say
dude, yes, that was exactly me with the word and, is like using the ampersand or using the word and. Yeah.
Exactly. And then like, you know, we're not even talking about like the music at this point. We're just talking about like what people are reading. And like that's something that I find super helpful to like be able to translate now, because, you know, I went into grad school and I was really lucky. You know, on the playing aspect, I was pretty behind, to be completely honest. Like I came into the grad school degree at Michigan State. Like I had a lot of technical ability. I didn't really understand bebop and like hard bop or any of that stuff. But I did have like a lot of experience as like a gigging musician. You know, like whenever I was in Austin, man, especially in 2017, I was playing probably 5 nights a week.
Yeah.
Arguably, I don't know. I mean, 2017 was a huge year for me just because like I remember I made Austin's top 10 horn list for like the Chronicle at the time. And then I remember like I was playing at least 5 nights a week. So, you know, I went into grad school with like a wealth of knowledge as far as like being a professional, like that, like pays rent. However, I also went in with like a lot of knowledge for like those capstone projects, if you will.
Sure.
And so, you know, like the recording stuff though, it was it really has taught me like 3 things. Number one, like translating a vibe onto audio is probably the hardest thing you can do. Number 2, like, you know, what we were talking about earlier, you know, like you can't like build a band kind of thing. Like you have to have like a cohesive unit or like a similar envisioning ensemble. And like number 3, like you have to be like super clear with like your transparency of like your image or like of your brand.
Sure. Yeah.
Like the recording stuff is like really hooked all that stuff up for at least for like my mind.
Yeah. And I think like another thing, a couple of things that came to mind whenever you're talking about that is, one, that's got to be super encouraging for like younger musicians who like hopefully listen to this, I guess. I mean, I can see like the numbers of who is listening, but I don't know exactly who. But anyways, if people are listening, that is comforting to know that even once you make a record, it's like you don't have it figured out, which should be like, duh, you know, like we're like you and I, like you're, I think like 3 or 4 years older than me, but we're still like relatively young, like not even relatively, like we're just young in the scene and figuring out like what we're doing. And especially after already getting like like an undergraduate and then being like, yeah, even going into grad school, I still didn't know like a lot of the intricacies of what I was talking about. Cause like you can get by and like the layman would listen to you, or like the younger jazz musician, like might listen to you and say, like, oh man, it's like super killing. I don't know why you would think you need to like do anything else, but it's like getting to those like steps and figuring out like, oh no, and now like building upon hearing the other things. And also the second thing that came to mind was like with making those records and figuring out those things, whenever you go back and listen to the earlier ones, it's almost like you want to wipe those off the face of the planet, because you're like, shit, man, this did not land. And you can like hear and understand about yourself. Or what did you say?
Hear exactly why it didn't.
Yeah, you can hear why it didn't, but you can also hear like what you were going for, which I know that's like the joke me and you have, like where like on the gig, like you'll take a course, I'll be like, man, yeah, like man, like I can totally see where you were going with that, you know. But like, huh?
Great to know you're still trying.
Oh man. Man, it sounds like you're in the shed right now, for sure. Like it sounds like you're in the middle of the shed. No, but it's like nice to know that like you can go back and see like, oh, that's what I was wanting to hit. But then whenever you put it into perspective of like listening to like your idol's work, like whenever I listen back to Kurt's stuff, I mean, I usually swear that like Kurt can do no wrong, but there's certainly things in like his earlier records that I'm just like, okay, yeah, that's like, I can hear where that evolved to later, and I still like it, but that was like less polished. And I even asked him about stuff like that once, and like his thing on, there's a song called Endless on his 97 Messenger record, and he's just like straight up yodeling and like screaming into the mic to where it's like almost distorting. And it's like, it's pretty like out. And he was like, yeah, man, that was just Chicago and the scene at the time, and I was just trying to figure it out.
Like, you know, Chicago's like home of the AARC, which is like the advancement or the artist advancement something of creativity, and it's like free jazz.
Yeah,
you know, so like that makes a lot of sense.
Which is cool though, too, man. Like, cause like I don't know, like everything sounds out until like it's refined, right?
Yeah. And also, you know, man, I actually, so like it was like pretty hip with like my grad school degree. And you know, like my grad school degree, one of my questions for my orals was free jazz and how trombone affected free jazz, which is something, I'm sorry, I had no interest in at the time.
Yeah.
And also I just didn't know. Like I basically had like this pre-assumed bias that's like kind of like mitigated from, you know, previous years of playing, which, you know, that's fine. Everybody has to admit that at some point. But anyways, man, like there's like so much like free jazz stuff that out there that's like super killing. Like, man, I actually didn't know this until I took this, like my jazz history class was a seminar in free jazz. And so like I got like the business for at least 15 weeks. Cool. And so now like Ornette Coleman, for example, like Ornette is from Fort Worth, right? And he was like a blues-based saxophonist before.
Mm.
And the thing is like the blues is out too, because like the blues can be, the blues can take many forms. However, like the way that Ornette did it, he was just so vocal with it, and like it like I guess really like his voice transcended his horn, which is why he's so killing. But also, if you listen to like some of like his recordings, there's a recording called Blues Connotation.
Okay.
And it's supposed to be a free jazz tune, but no, man, it's just a blues.
Okay.
There's a riff. It's like that's the blues. Like if you play that, like that's the blues. Like I think our perceptions of some genres are like wrongly, if that's wrongly interpreted. Like man, like I have like a whole new respect for free jazz, man. Especially, like there's this cat named Albert Mangelsdorf. It's like the oudest name.
That also records just by his name. Go ahead.
But man, like so he's like credited as one of the guy to have made multiphonics recorded first.
Oh, cool.
But like the thing is he was playing, to me it sounded like a rock tribute, but like it's just like him in like fifths, like playing like this, like I think it sounds like a rock song to me, but it's a song. But like like there it is, like I'm comparing rock to free jazz, yet rock is like one of the most agreeable genres to have like come out of America.
Sure.
So once again, it's just like I think we have like this like false perception of different genres, but like free jazz definitely, man. Like, and like it just kind of goes back to like what we were talking about with like like refining or honing that craft. Only way you learn is by being uncomfortable.
Yeah, man. I think that there's certainly like I need to do a lot more. I need to put a lot more time into listening like free jazz stuff. But like my first like introduction to free jazz was the Herbie Hancock Wayne Shorter gig that they did. And also, were you there?
I saw everybody walk out.
Dude, yeah, it was crazy, man. Because like for the first like 20 minutes, people sat in because they were waiting to hear like Watermelon Man or like whatever the fuck,
Yeah.
And then you just saw like I wasn't in like the very top, and I was in like the mezzanine or whatever, and I just watched everybody, like half the audience, which I even said, I think I was talking to Utah in like an earlier episode of this podcast or this show, and I was like, it was Sparky, but I was like, man, it's almost like I feel like for them, I would be more glad after those people leave, because then you know who you're playing to. The people because it's like you're weeding out all the people who maybe were just there for like bragging rights or like didn't want to miss out on seeing like two big names. But yeah, I mean, it was wild because the whole time me and Nathaniel McKay were sitting up there, and we'd come up from like Texas State, and I just kept looking at him and just kind of like, exchanging eye glances. I wasn't talking, but I was just kind of like, I don't get anything. Like, I don't understand any of this. Like, it's awesome and I'm here for it, but they played for like 2.5 hours. So it was like, if you're not into free jazz, or you don't know what free jazz is, that was like a crazy crash course in it, and like one of the tunes was tonal, so like it was wild. But yeah, right, big air quotes there. But it was great, and it made me want to have like more of an appreciation for it. And then like once I got into like later in my studies at Texas State, once I started getting into stuff that was like John Cage, obviously that's like different, but it's similar enough. And I was like, oh, this is cool, because it's like anything that can happen will happen, and this is exciting to hear stuff. Yeah,
that's a great connecting point. And also, like, man, like I had a really big connecting point in my life with like jazz, actually, man. So like my first introduction to jazz was really like Maynard.
Mm.
And like, it was really like Maynard in the 80s and 90s. So like the commercialized, like Michael Jackson pop things, which is fine, like
Yeah, I think that was the same for me because it was like in high school, right? Because I was like a trumpet player primarily then. And it started as Wayne Bergeron because he came to town in like the 10th grade. And then it was like, oh, he's listening and like emulating like some of the Maynard stuff. So then checked out like Master of the Stratosphere. But go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's exactly it. But like my connecting point. So like, and I say this with like the most cautious words now because I have the utmost respect for JJ Johnson now. I mean, like, to me, JJ Johnson is the best trombonist to have lived, period. And I say that because I've slowed him down half time and his tone is still perfect.
I'm calling Andre Hayward, by the way. Not just joking.
No, actually, he's like the one, man. He's like the one who like onto that. But what's it called? But like for me, like my connecting point to like not true jazz, but like mainstream bebop was Nat Adderley, which do you know Nat Adderley?
I do.
Man.
I mean, I wouldn't be able, if you were to reference records, I couldn't do that. I'm not, before, like a couple of years ago, I would have been like, yeah, I know that person, and I wouldn't know like that much about them, and I just not want to embarrass myself. I do know who Nat Adderley is. I have not done as much deep dive as I need to, but go ahead.
So like to me, like, I mean, I wouldn't say like Nat is, he's obviously one of the best trumpet players, or really cornetist to have lived, but like, like I wouldn't say his carbon footprint was as big as Freddie Hubbard's or like Woody or like Pops by any means. However, though, his ability to like encapsulate that rawness via audio, he took this solo on Mysterioso, this monk tune, which is really just a blues, but like with different chords on the head. But anyways, like it's called Mysterioso, and it's on this JJ record called The Trombone Master. And I remember I stole this disc from my band director because he was a trombone player. Sure. Like, Mr. Matheson, can I see this disc? He was like, yeah, sure. And I like didn't return it for like 4 years. like returned it like my sophomore year in college. And anyways, so like I turned on the first track, which is Mysterioso, I believe. And you hear like this like piano intro, and then it's like this trumpet player and then JJ, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then like there's like this like pause, and then Nat Adderley just comes in with like this and like way up in the stratosphere with like the rawness that Maynard would have, except like he like comes down this like bebop line, and it's just, oh man, it just like grabbed me by like the ear. And like for me, like Maynard to Nat to JJ was like, that's what it was. And then later on, I could appreciate Woody Shaw a little bit more, because like Freddie, obviously like Freddie has like rawness in his sound too, but like Woody had a little bit more, in my opinion. But like Freddie had a little bit more, I don't want to say refinement, but he had maybe a little bit more finesse on the roundness of his notes. But that could also just be an intention thing, like one is not better than the other. And I like hate that debate as much as the next person, but like to me, like that Nat Adderley send off for me was like, that was like my jumping point to like the mainstream like masters that I feel like so many of us want to emulate, but like sometimes we like get it's hard, man, because like in, I don't want to say in jazz school, but like in school we're like taught, like right, do like your own thing, but like like we like didn't like develop as people until we like mimicked like our siblings or like parents. So like we have to like mimic like we have to like mimic the cats, man. Yeah. Which like that to me is something I learned in grad school, which is like now I feel like I'm like catching up, or like trying to catch up per se, to like emulating JJ and emulating Curtis and Slide. Oh my gosh, like just for me to like play one thing like Jay is like, I'm like, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Well, because I remember playing a gig, it was like 2018, and I had this residency over at the Intercontinental, like on 7th and Congress, and I was playing like every Tuesday night. And I remember one night, like David couldn't be there, and so I had Colin on the gig. And at that time, that's like, I think 2017 was when I made the shift from like, I don't know. Like basically, in high school. I was trying to like emulate horn players, and then I was like, "Oh, Frank Sinatra's like the man" in like senior year, and then like my freshman year of college, I was like, Frank Sinatra, like because I was doing an opera degree, right? I was like, well, Frank Sinatra's really just doing like the bel canto thing, and yeah, he swings, but like it's not really like. But basically, I was then my freshman year, I was introduced to like bebop. And I didn't know it was bebop. Like I didn't even know that like thing. I just like heard all of the vocabulary, and I was like, well, Frank Sinatra doesn't do any of that. And then I started listening to like scatting, and I was like, well, Frank Sinatra doesn't do any of that. And then so that was what like made me segue into like Chet Baker, and then I found Kurt, and then it was just like a hard, like, you know, that meme of like the car that like goes hard off to the side. It was like traditional route, Kurt Elling, and then I just like went to the right. And some in town might say, you know, like I even talked to Adrian Ruiz on an episode that's actually going to release this week. But we did it like several weeks ago, and we'd never met in person, but we'd like met in passing or maybe exchange a text or so. And he like knew, he was like, oh yeah, you're the Kurt guy, which like, you know, like at first I was like, ah, shit, like maybe I should like tone it down. But I was like, you know what? Like, no, like this is, like he's one of the most killing dudes in this. He's like the top of my instrument, at least, like, or what I think to be, certainly male. And so I was like, whatever, it's fine. But Colin at that gig had told me, he was like, look, man, he was like, if you're thinking about like backing off of the Kurt thing before you've learned everything about Kurt, you should not do that. He's like, because that's how I was with Meldau. He was like, people were telling me to like venture out and try to like incorporate more people. He's like, and I would do that little by little. He's like, but I couldn't until I learned like as much as I could about Meldau and fully was able to emulate his sound as if people were listening to me and be like, oh yeah, that's Meldau, or at least some assimilation of that. He's like, I couldn't move on to the next person. And so like, that's kind of what I did as well. And I was like, you know what? Like, I feel like that's the most like authentic way to figure out like a sound and figure out what you like and then venture off. Because if you're not doing that, then it's like somebody who's like, yeah, I sing, you know, in a cover band, I sing in a jazz band, I sing in a folk band, I sing in a country band, I sing in a rock band. It's basically like saying like, oh, I know a little about a lot rather than knowing a lot about one and then moving to the next one, knowing a lot about that. And
yeah, well, you know, like that like has its place of course too. Like, you know, if you just like, and there's not like, I always have to preface this, but then it always comes off as if like I'm like being jive about it, but I'm really not. Like, there's nothing wrong with being a fantastic sideman. Nothing. Because those cats are always working. Why? Because they're versatile and adaptable. You know, like, even though this cat really has like his own sound, like Steve Davis, for example, man, that cat plays with Chick Corea. Cat plays with McBride. He has his own band. He's a Smoke Sessions recording artist.
Yeah.
Cat plays with Michelle Camilo. This cat also plays with the Dizzy All-Star Big Band. Like, those are 5 different vibes.
Yeah.
And, like, I'll never forget what he said to me, man. So I got to interact with Stevie D actually a lot in the past year. And I'm super fortunate because, like, you know, a lot of people, like, don't get these opportunities. But, like, this, like, kind of, like, goes into, like, what I was saying earlier, though. It was, like, man, you, like, go and get, like, refine your craft so that way you can have more resources available to you, you know, grad school. But man, like Steve Davis said, you know, guys, we're like out here like trying to be like the next big new like wheel. Like we just all like want to like put our own stamp. But why can't we just be like really good musicians? Like, why can't we just like accept and be cool with like being really good musicians? And at first I was like, okay, well that definitely has something to do with like ego. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'll be the first person to say, like, ain't nobody in the room with me that has a bigger ego than me. Like, I have no problem with saying that.
What are you, a singer?
Huh?
He said, what are you, a singer?
But, you know, man, like whenever he said that like really had a drastic effect on me because in like the span of 5 years, he's won 5 Grammys with different people. And like some people just like wait their whole life to like win one, but like, and some don't. Like some wait their whole life and they just don't.
Yeah.
He's won 5 back to back. I think he knows what he's doing, and I would say that is an objective way to measure success in the music industry.
Yeah.
You know, at some point there has to be some objectivity in a subjective art form, or else everybody would be a professor, or everybody would be gigging, or everybody would be in everybody's band. But that's like not the case.
Yeah, and I think there's like something to be said about like it is finding that balance, man. And I think that's like something that is really great that you brought up. That like I'll admit that like I probably need to put into perspective too. I think that that's maybe something that's a little more common for like band leaders, right? Because they feel like what they need to do is happening and yeah, pushing it forward. Yeah. So I think that's like a really important point. But at the same time, like you said, like what Steve Davis said was making sure that like basically you can be a good section player.
Yeah.
Or not even like section, because that would imply that it's like a big group, but just like a player that is serving the music at hand rather than just focusing on what's next. But it's hard to find that balance, right? Like I was talking to somebody about that the other day of like, we don't want to like invalidate everything that's come before as a like museum piece or a period piece, because that's what non-jazz people do to us already. That's why we get like the elevator wallpaper music, like moniker. But at the same time, it's like you have to find honoring what's come before, incorporating that in what you're doing, and pushing it forward at the same time, but also finding each decade of jazz to be like self-sufficient in its own right, which is it's this weird paradox, man. And like I'm sure somebody's got it figured out that probably has like 40, 50 years on me, but like I don't yet. So
and you know, like there's like something to be said, you know, like because like there's like two sides of the coin, of course. You know, you just want to be a good sideman, great, okay, but like being a good leader means like you're making your own mark too, like, you know, like, and I hate to use this because this sounds narcissistic, but you know, like JJ and Kai Winding, for example, like those two guys, they like set the deal, like they said it. That's why they had Columbia as their recording distributor.
Yeah.
Did it. But you know, like Chris and I were like, well, you know, we can do this, and it wasn't to sound rash or to sound brash for that. No, it was just like, well, we want to do this because we love the sound, but also like nobody's doing bass trombone and tenor trombone like real. I hate to say this, but like using like language and vocab along with like influences of like different players. And so like that like, you know, I'm guilty of both sides of it, because sometimes I'm like, well, I should be able to read in a free jazz ensemble just the same as I can read in a salsa band, and same thing that I can do in a session. But at the end of the day, like, you know, everybody has their priorities, and like if your priorities are to like be like, you know, the next, you know, footprint or like the next like person for like, you know, that year in your instrument, then by all means don't feel guilty, you know, do your thing, man, like peace out. But like, you know, I think there's definitely a fine line. Like not every year is going to be a slam dunk.
Yeah.
Because if that's the case, you'll never know what a slam dunk is if you just keep, you know, I always use this analogy with my students. Like, how do you know the difference between a good steak and a bad steak? You've eaten a good steak and you've eaten a bad steak. And the only reason you know that is because you've had the bad steak.
Right. Yeah, man. I mean, it doesn't make the bad steak or the bad year or the bad record or whatever like any easier to stomach. Not to eliminate the food analogy too much, but like it, yeah, like it's a hard pill to swallow, but it's like necessary, right? Because if everything roses, then it.
Yeah, well, and you know, like present day example is like Christian McBride, man. Like he played with James Brown, Freddie Hubbard. I mean, like
with Betty Carter, man. Like, yeah.
His first record was on Verve.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, he's like, or like even Andre, you know, like Andre SF Jazz Lincoln Center, Betty Carter. Those are three different vibes within the jazz idiom.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's like a nice segue into, because I take like a few notes before we do each session, but I never like to like purely go off of it because it's not like this isn't like so tell me, Altin, whenever you were making, it's nothing like that. But I like to just have stuff to reference of things that I find really interesting and want to talk about. And so far, I haven't even really hit anything because it's just been such a great conversation. But man, I want to like skip down to a little bit on like realization because like what you were saying, you were like, yeah, nobody's really done this, like to the best of both of our knowledges of like two bone players with a bunch of vocab. Like before I had listened to the record, whenever you were like, yeah, it's Sencalar Glassman Quintet, I was like, oh, like in my mind, I was like, oh, what does Glassman play? It's probably another horn player or something like that. But I didn't realize that it was two bone players. And then I was even listening to like Dease for Dastardly, and I was like, wait, do I hear three bone players? And then I like found out that it was Michael Dease, right? And I was like, okay, that makes sense. But like the idea of having like multiple of one instrument, I mean, it's not reinventing the wheel, certainly not, because obviously like you look at like Kind of Blue, right? And that's got like an alto and a tenor. Obviously, I mean, it's like different, but in the same way, yours is still different because you've got a bass bone player and a tenor bone player. So I was like, that was super interesting to me, like right off the bat. And then once I started listening to it, I was like, oh, this totally works because it's two different timbres. And also you, and it's Chris, right? Chris Glassman? Yeah. You and Chris have like different vocabulary where it sounds like obviously two different players, two different people. But in that same sense, I was like, nothing feels redundant, which having two of any horn on a record is at the risk of sounding redundant, but it doesn't. And it feels really, really nice, which also puts into perspective all of those like accolades on like the EPK that you put out, right? And like all the different like things. So anyways, I've talked too much like myself about it, but I was going to ask like about like, so you sent me what was good is good to plug on like the intro of one of the episodes a couple of weeks ago. So like, tell me about that, like why you used that thing with like Jimmy Heath and what that connection was.
So, okay. So there's like a 3-part thing because it's also going to like answer the question of like the bass trombone and tenor trombone choice too. So let's like back up to like 2018. Not that was long ago, but so Michael Dease, who is one of my mentors, like currently, I just talked to him like the other day. I was like, roast me, like, what do you think? Well, and but anyways, so I was like, hey, Prof, I call him Prof Dease, or really I just call him Prof. I'm like, hey, Prof, I know you run the Brevard Jazz Institute. I was wondering, like, what are like the audition requirements to be like a TA? He's like, oh man, so basically you put a $300 deposit down, then you get it back after the camp. And I was like, oh, cool. He was like, everything else is paid for though if you're a TA. I was like, oh, perfect, great. And so I really didn't know what I was signing up for because at the same time, his wife, who's the co-director, who's also a phenomenal percussionist. I mean, like, ridiculous percussionist.
Yeah,
classical.
Okay, cool.
Gwen Dease. She's the chair of percussion at Michigan State University. I mean, she is ridiculous. She's also one of the nicest people in the world. And so she was pregnant with her and his second child, Charlie. And so she could not make it. She could not make it because she was a little too far along. Yeah. And so he was like, all right, man, so I just got to be honest with you. If you do this, you're going to be doing a lot of admin work as well as like the TA thing. He was like, and so, not a lot of people don't know this, but like I actually listened to all the tapes of the applicants and I ranked them for like the big bands there. Wow. And so I like really could not mess this up because I was already his TA for a year. So I was like, okay, I know how to do this. Like, I know exactly what he's looking for because, you know, he tells me all the time. And so I was like, okay, so I can do this. And, you know, of course I like double checked with him and whatnot. Like it wasn't like my sole decision. However, I did do all the listening. And so, you know, it started with that. And so that's like not unheard of to be like a TA and like do like a lot of that kind of work. Right. And so, okay, cool. You know, I'm just like training myself, whatever. And then whenever I get there, I'm also the liaison between the admin and Dease.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then I'm associate director for Big Band 1. Okay, so I'm the TA. And then I'm also in charge of combos set 5, I think it was, yeah. And then I know it sounds like I'm like trying to like flex, but I'm really not. I'm just like tired about this. But and then whenever I got there, I also coordinated all the special guests like Ulysses Owens, Rodney Whitaker, Pete Sears. I like called them. Luckily, I already had Prof Whitaker's number because, you know, he was my teacher.
Sure.
So I was just like coordinating, make sure everybody was cool. And so the thing is, like, none of this is unheard of. But to me, a 22-year-old, maybe 23 at the time, like, I didn't know what to do. Sure. So I was like, all right, I got to like set this down. So, you know, that started my process of like, okay, it's time to like step up. Like, you're going to graduate next year. You're going to be looking for either a job or you're going to be gigging. So it was like time to do this. And so every morning we made room for the quote of the day. And so there was like 5 and they were fantastic, you know. Then like the 6th day, it's funny. I wish I could say the 7th day, but, you know, but on like the 6th day, I remember, I think it was Mike Dease who did it. Yeah. Cause Luther said one too, but he said the great Jimmy Heath, cause Mike Dease played with Jimmy Heath. And he was like, the great Jimmy Heath said, what was good is good. And that also goes into another thing that he says is I don't play hat sizes.
Okay.
Hat sizes mean like 7'8", 5'4".
Sure.
You know, so, you know, and he came from that era, which is fine. And he can say that. He made his career, you know, like he's an NEA jazz master, you know, kind of thing. But, and so, you know, he said that. But what really resonated in me was what was good is good, which kind of goes back to like that school thing of like, you got to be, you know, like you're only you, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, or like the classic, like, you know, you got to do something new, blah, 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 which, you know, there's nothing wrong with. But like, you are already so unique as an individual, like that is as new as it gets, you know? Sure.
Yeah.
And for that past year of grad school, I mean, a couple people know this, but like, man, I was honestly thinking about like leaving just cause like, I could not take like how far behind I was. It just like, it like drove me insane. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, you know, like this is like going to like make it or break it. And so I then started thinking about what was good is good. And I like thought about it for like 4 days because the camp is 2 weeks. And I was like, I got like some weeks to figure this out, whatever. Mm. And it really didn't hit me until the next month. And so I was subbing for Professor Dease out in Florida at the Dr. Phillips Center for the Arts. I was the jazz trombone faculty member for their jazz intensive. And somebody said like, oh, they should just make like a new design for the trombone. I was like, why should we change what's already so great? And it clicked. Mm. I don't know why that exact comment made it click, but like, it was like, why do we need to change something that is so fantastic already? Whenever we, as people, can enhance it by just being ourselves. Yeah. And so I was like, listen, I've written an album of originals. I've taken, you know, comp classes. I've like been on record dates, whatever. Like I know how to write. And so I was like, what's like a tune I love? And then come to find out, Jimmy Heath's nickname was Little Bird, you know, because like hung out with Bird. So I was like, well, confirmation. I can always rip on confirmation. And so I was like, man, I can do that. And so I was like, I don't want to like change like the A's, but like the B's, I can work with something here. And so I was like, well, what's the most common movement in the Western music hemisphere, a 2-5-1, a perfect authentic cadence.
Sure.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, this is what we can do. And so what I did was I took the first 4 bars and I moved it down a half step to A instead of B flat on confirmation. And so I did a 2-5 to A. And then the next part I did a 2-5 to D flat. And I kept that part the same. But for some reason, I was like, oh man, yeah, this is hip. But I only changed like 4 bars. Like, did I really do anything? Yes, I did.
Sure.
I did. You know, like I felt like I was a part of it. Like I felt like I was a part of like this tune. And then on the last day, I had the same target chords, except on the last day, I do a whole tone motion down. So instead of F major 7 to E minor 7 flat 5 A7 D minor, like I just went F E flat D flat B natural B flat, and so I made it like go down by the whole step and then resolve using the tritone sub or the half step above kind of thing.
Sure.
And then I was like, you know what, like this is good. I don't need to like fix anything, and so I just wrote a pretty standard melody. I was thinking about and I was just like and I was like, all right, cool, this is done. So then I like kind of left it alone. I was like, all right, cool. I wrote like a quartet tune. I feel accomplished. And then Chris and I started like basically, you know, we were like kind of competing for gigs for like a whole year, but you know, I love Michigan, but like there just was not enough work.
Sure.
You know, and so we were like, well, we need to stop competing for like weekly gigs at the jazz thing. We should just do like a J&K tribute because like Chris, as you heard, he's a freak on bass trombone. Yeah. And so we're like, okay, cool. So we like wrote out like 10, 15 tunes because it's just one set. And then and I was like, well, can we use this tune that I wrote? He was like, yeah, sure, I don't care. And so I booked the gig because I knew the host already because I had a gig there under my name. And so I was like, all right, cool. So how about we do this? He was like, okay, yeah, great. And so we were just honestly excited to play. And so we played basically arrangements of standards and then like maybe 2 originals. And it wasn't because we didn't feel comfortable with our writing. It was just like we already had such a solid set of like music that had been recorded. It's like, man, if we play this, people will be able to connect to like our music because they've heard it. Sure. And that's like another thing is like, you know, human beings, we have to have some kind of familiarity in order to like something. Yeah. Like, it doesn't matter what. Like, for example, astronomy. I remember I took an astronomy course in my undergrad, and he was like, this course is only here because we have to feel comfortable with what's up above. And this dude like worked for NASA, and he was like, what's the constellation? And we were like, oh, shapes in the sky. He was like, wrong. Figments of our imagination. I was like, what? Yeah. And ever since then, I was like, no, we just like want to be, you know, familiar with something so that way we feel like we're in control. And so I was like, oh, I know this standard. Now I can just like add something that I already know how to do. And so fast forward a year, we get to like May. We're like, all right, let's do this record next month. And we're like, okay, great. So we had like won 2 grants, and we're like, okay, great, let's do this. And so our time at Michigan State was super cathartic. Both of us came from like really good programs. He came from like DU, which was like a private conservatory in Denver. And I came from UT, 2, you know, fantastic classical trombone programs along with like some great jazz from like 2 big cities. But whenever we came to school, we were just really green. We didn't like really understand like how to love jazz and also love the backstory behind it as well. Yeah. Like love to play it. We didn't like love the process of it just yet. And so Chris had some life moments. And so he wrote this tune called Sometimes You Lose. I was like, we can't have a tune on the record named Sometimes You Lose. and he actually, no, I think he said that. And I was like, yeah, we can't have that. And then he was like, all right, I'm going to come up with a new title. And so we came up with the title he came up with the title Realization. And So that wasn't even like a plan for our thing yet. It was something else.
Yeah.
And so once like we get down the line, we get to the session, and I didn't really have a name for the tune, and for like my tune, the What Was Good Is tune. And then I was like, well, let's call it What Was Good Is Good. And then I think Dease asked, he was like, why? I was like, remember at Brevard, he was like, wow, okay, yeah, that's it. Let's call it that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we put it on the record because, like, you know, we have some like we have some originals on there. We have like some familiar forms, but like we don't really have like a straight contrafact per se on that record.
Sure.
But like this is as close as it got, I think. You know, yeah. So like, you know, we wanted to like have that so that way we could also present, because it's important to present on our record. Like, you know, you could present like you follow the masters, you know, like you also like, because, you know, even though critics are like always looking for new stuff, they only like new stuff that they've heard through other channels.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, like if like the Austin Chronicle would have like reviewed the Wayne Shorter Herbie Hancock concert.
Uh-huh.
I don't know, man. You know, I've seen like what Jay Trachtenberg and the other cat, Peter Blackstock, and then Deborah Sleeth Gupta, I think it is.
Okay.
They don't review like free jazz. They review like hard bop, post bop, neo.
Sure.
I don't think they would have liked that because it wasn't as familiar.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, like, we also had to keep that in mind.
Yeah, man. So something that you said that like all of that was like really amazing to hear about. One of the things that I wanted to ask that was near the end that specifically struck me was the Sometimes You Lose thing. And you're like, well, we can't have a record or a tune on the record that says Sometimes You Lose. And like, not at all to like question your decision at all, because like to each their own, and I don't disagree with it. But I almost think that like sometimes it's cool to have something that's like as intriguing as that, because to me, like I personally, if somebody wrote a tune called Sometimes You Lose, especially if it was a vocal tune, and actually even more so if it was an instrumental tune, I'd be like, well, I want to listen to that first. You know, I try to listen to everything down, but because it's so intriguing that I'm like, oh shit, what? You know, so like if it was vocal, then it's like, I'd be intrigued to hear like what the lyrics have to say of why it's that way. But also in the opposite sense of it, I'd almost be really curious to hear, like if it was an instrumental tune, is like, what am I picking up on through the way that they're presenting this head?
Yeah, man. So that's a really interesting conversation. And here's like what I've like kind of learned, being like a student of Michael Dease as well as like now a mentee, if you will. Because I'm like technically like still a student of his.
Sure.
And so like he's like so thoughtful, like everything he's gonna do, every single thing. It's like annoying actually, and I love it because it's like so precise. But anyways, so like the first 3 tunes on the album is Dias for Dastardly, In Your Own Head, and Impressions. And like and so like we were like, well, wow, like those 3 are like heavy hitters, you know, like those 3 like those 3 like titles are like, okay, this is obviously like, you know, to throw Impressions on like an album to me is like, okay, that's like a pretty bold move. Like you better have something to say over this 2-chord vamp.
Yeah.
Right. And so like musically, that's it. In Your Own Head is like, you could obviously like tell it's like probably going to be some kind of like through composed-ish thing. And then Dias for Dastardly, well, it's a shuffle similar to Art Blakey, as well as like Christian McBride's I forget the tune, he wrote it after, but you know, like those 3 tune heads are like so heavy already. And then we were like, well, we have like Realization, then we have what was the other one, It's No Wonder, like those, like I feel like we already have like enough one-liners that like made it interesting. And then like the other thing to consider that like this is like what I think this is like what Prof Dease was trying to get across. This is like, you know, you guys, like this is like your like debut album as like a group. If you come out that bold, it might be assumed like, like, it's just like your first record, like, blah, 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 blah. You have to like err on the side of caution with like everything that you do. Cause like, we really wanted to put some we have like some different ideas for like the liner notes, as well as a couple other things. We were like, okay, let's have people who like have like 30 years ahead of us do this. Cause like, I was like ready to like go to war about it. And Chris, and I'm sure Chris was too, but like Chris, like the reason why him and I work so well is because like I always check with him before I like say something that like I know could be controversial. But
Sure.
on the flip side, like whenever Chris is like, because like Chris is like one of those guys, like he doesn't show his cards unless he absolutely has that card in his hand.
Mm.
And so I'm not totally opposite. It's just like I have a little bit more risk that I'm willing to take. And so like the reason why we like counteract each other so much or mesh together so well is because like I'm willing to push him to like his limit, and like he's like willing to like put me down to where it's like not, like you don't want to like show like the rawness.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's just like the balance of like co-band leading, right? Or just like two people. I mean, it's like not to, like falsely liken it to like a relationship type thing, like in the romantic sense, but it is like, it is very much a relationship because
exactly that.
You're balancing each other out from the perspective of like you're both creating a product that like literally your name, you're not just like both on the record. It's like your name is the artist name. Mm-hmm. So it's like figuring out, it's like what the decisions you want to make are, and when to show caution and when to show like, be like, no, like have a little bit more hubris on this.
And that like goes to like the musical side of it too, because like on Dease or Dastardly, like I didn't like, Chris and I both are like, okay, Michael Dease is playing on this track. I'm not going to try to do everything I can. It's going to process me like the wee grasshopper, even though that's not the intention. It's just like you want to like present the best product that you can. However, whenever you have a 3-time Grammy winner on your record as a guest artist, you should probably just simmer down.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Like, I mean, that's something that like I remember when I was preparing for the third record that I just put out, like I was thinking before I had a full idea of like, because obviously, when we're thinking about records, like for me, like right now I'm planning like, I guess it's like technically the next 2, but it's going to be split into the next 5. So like I'm always thinking of different ideas and like trying to like dial it in. But like getting ready for the third one, I was like, oh, well, I think I would probably want to have somebody like Kenny Williams, like do like a guest thing. Like I was thinking about doing like a Mel Torme thing. Sorry, go ahead.
I played with Kenny.
Yeah, Kenny's great, man. He's a really good friend of mine. He was last week's episode of this. And
talking about Kenny like here in Austin.
Yes, Kenny Williams here in Austin.
Okay, so I love Kenny. We were on Sophisticated Ladies together.
Oh, cool.
Because Andre was on that show, but unfortunately his mom died during the show run. And so Dre asked me to sub, and then that's how I met Kenny, Jennifer Holliday, Brian Whitted. Man, Brian, God. Yeah, man, Kenny's, oh, God, he's such a sweetheart.
Yeah, he's great, man. And I was like, oh, there's like this Mel Torme tune called "You Better Love Me" that's just like this really killing head. And like I hadn't really heard it like much more other than that like Mel Torme hit. And I was like, oh, I'll do that on the next record. But then as I started to like put together the record, I was like, oh no, I want to go like a much darker direction, and I want to do less of like standards in their original form. And that largely had to do with like a mentor of mine who's like more of an informal mentor, but like I would say one of the most influential mentors in my life is like Clark Summers, which is Kurt Ellen's bass player in Chicago. And he just like totally, I remember like where I was when I got this email. Like it was a young person's, like, I don't know, I wouldn't call it a mistake because of the fact that it benefited me so well, but it was like a young person's move, I guess I should say, where I was like, hey man, like, you know, because we had the connection through David Young. Like David and Clark had played together a bunch in Chicago. And then David was my mentor. And then so with that, Clark comped me a couple tickets to the Kurt show when he was in Austin. And then I like reached out to Clark and I was like, hey man, like I just released a record like 6 months ago. Like, and earnestly, like very honestly, like I was like, I just want like you to tear it apart basically. And like, tell me what I need to do better for the next one. Cause I was already planning it. And he sent me back this like 6-page email that like one paragraph was about the record. And it's the one that you were on, is From Dusk Till Dawn. And then the rest of like the 5.75 of a page email was like all about, he didn't say anything that I did wrong. He was just like, these are the things you should be thinking about. And it was so like abstract, or not even abstract. It was just like, it was more in just the general idea of like how those like higher cats think. And it was just like, oh, I'm doing it all wrong. I read it in a Shipley's parking lot at 9:15 in the morning. I like just got like my donuts and my coffee, and I went like got back in my car and I saw the notification. I clicked on it and I just read it. I sat there for an hour reading it over and over and over again. And I was like, I either need to quit this, like quit jazz, or I have like serious work to do. And it wasn't that he was shitting on me. It was just that like, it was one of those milestone, like pushing moments.
You know, man, like that, like, I'm going to go off on a tangent here. I'm sorry, but like, man, mentorship is so important. Like okay, I'm going to say this with no caution.
Yeah.
I feel like cats, like a lot of the cats who want to like play this music refuse to be mentored. Like, it's like, okay, I did my university studies. I hated the last year because I was like in JO1 for like all 4 years and maxed out my potential. And you know, now I'm cool. Now I just like want to do this on my own because like jazz is like a hard game. And it's like, it doesn't have to be, you know, like,
yeah,
like people who love this music help people for free. And like, you know, I'm not going to say who, but I can call 3 people right now and get a free lesson, and they are some of the best trombonists in the world. And they're not teaching me for free because I'm poor or because like I'm young. They're teaching me for free because, number one, I've like paid them for a lesson already in the past. And number 2, like they know that I love this music because I bug them all the time.
Sure.
And like, I feel like a lot of cats, like, you know, we gets like this comfortability of like, you know, gigging X amount of nights per week, you know, being on like a record once a year. And like some of us are like comfortable with that, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, whenever there's like no growth in that, why did you get into this music if you like don't want to keep growing? Like, are you looking at music as a business? Because if that's the case, I don't think jazz is going to be the right suit for you. Like, people who died years ago, like playing this music, didn't do it to like become rich and famous, even though there was a lot more money back in the industry. But by no means were they actually rich. They were just comfortable.
Yeah.
Like they, like $500,000 in New York today is probably similar to $200,000 in Austin, which is comfortable. But I wouldn't by any means say it's like, oh man, you're a top 10%. No,
not at all. Man, did you see like John Kleckman's repost like yesterday or whatever for Sonny Rollins' birthday?
Yeah, and that's exactly what triggered this.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
And you know, this cat is 90. He probably lives in a really nice apartment in New York. But by no means is Sonny like, no. Yeah. Like, he's not doing that. You know, he's just being a philanthropist now.
Yeah.
Like this, so anyways, getting back to like the tangent, which is like an oxymoron in itself. But anyways, like I think we as like not present day musicians, but like we as like a collective, like academia, informed jazz, because we're academically informed, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's great because now we're having acceptance or validity, if you will, into like a higher power of education. But anyways, like we like I think we forget that like we want to learn this music, but we don't want to be taught after like going to school. It's like, and it may just be like, oh, well, I had like a really hard professor. Well, good. Like, it's like what people expect from you, like, and I say this once again I say this part with caution, like I'm a professor. I've been a professor for 2 years. I have published articles on jazz improvisation in Texas Jazz Educators Association. I think I'm a pretty good pedagogue. I have great students, 5 of which have gotten Division I scholarships for jazz and classical studies as performance majors. And I still call 5 people to talk to them about what I need to do next.
Yeah.
Some people would say I'm like semi-successful, for like my age. That doesn't matter though. Like success in music isn't a check mark. That's like a water cup that has an endless bottom.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And so that's great that you got that 6-page email, because that 6-page email probably fueled you for like the next 8 years, 10 years.
Dude. And like, it fuels me every day. Like I think I read the email like once a week, twice a week. Because it's like, and I get something new from it each time too, because I mean, like, man, like one of the things in it, like that he said was, and it's in the liner notes of my newest record. I guess what I'm asking in a general sense is, how are you connecting with the material in a way that resonates in 2018? Are you presenting these songs in a provocative or compelling way? As interpreters, are you/we mining in the material up until this point elements yet to be revealed? And if not, why record them? In these renderings, do you resemble, at least on a micro sense, the canonical practitioners of my respective craft? And if you don't, what facets of study should I embark on to convince people that I share even a distant resemblance of my crazy uncle, and that I deserve a seat at the musical table or the kids' table for that matter? Things like that.
God.
And it was like, and I mean, the email's like a huge email, right? But just that soundbite was just like, I read that over and over and over. And like, even in my liner notes, I put like, these words have been my guiding principle since like June the 7th of 2018.
That is bad. And see, you know what, man? Like, you like took it the way that like people should, but like some people would be like, what do you mean? Like, this is yes, this is a subjective art form. However, if this is so subjective, why do we seek critique?
Yeah.
Like, and like, man, I think like October of like 2017, like my probably like 5th lesson with Prof. Dease. He like, I'll never forget how hard he roasted me. And he like didn't mean to. It was just like, he's just like that kind of mentor, and I love it. Because like that's like how I respond. I respond to like,
yeah, right.
And so he was like, I like brought in this transcription of Steve Davis, and like those people who like know my playing, I've gradually gravitated towards that a lot more. But the beginnings of that were not Steve Davis. They were the farthest thing from Stevie D. They just weren't. That wasn't what I thought was, like what I loved or what I thought I loved. And so anyways, I remember he was like, man, this sounds great. Wow. It actually sounds like you study with me.
Oh, cool. Wow. That's incredible.
And I've had some like harsh lessons with like mentors, but like that was like, whoa. Yeah. I didn't know how to take it at first. And that's like kind of like what started like I got super dark my first year of grad school, and I was like, man, I don't know if I should do this.
Man, like there's something to be said about that. Like, so I have like the best possible life partner of like reasonable thinking, because Lydia is she got a degree in psychology and currently is the research lab manager for early childhood development in psychology at UT.
Wow.
So she's like, yeah, and she like she did like on the ground work on the island of Vanuatu, which is an archipelago off of the coast of Oceania, near New Zealand. And she like was with them for 3 months with the indigenous populations in like huts, like doing research with them, like a couple summers ago. So like she's like, the joke that I always say is like she's so much more impressive than me, and I did that on purpose, type thing. But anyway, she's like really great because she and her mother is a clinical psychologist as well. So like they always like check me on this, but I do to a certain extent stand by that, like the idea, and Lydia's, I mean, we live together, so she's probably going to bust in the door at any point and be like, you're wrong, that you shouldn't say that, you shouldn't perpetuate that to people. So that's the disclaimer for anybody that maybe I'm full of shit. But like I always say that, like, to a certain extent, it's nice to have that like imposter syndrome, because it counteracts the ego. Because like every musician, for the most part, I mean, like you might have like a person like, I don't know, like Chris Jones, who's like a really like amicable, like beautiful person who doesn't have an ego, like, or at least doesn't let it show. But then like, or what were you gonna say? Sorry, it cut out the audio.
Or like Andre, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Who are like really great musicians, but then, and it's funny that you said Andre, because like Chris Jones and Andre put records together. But yeah, like to a certain extent, you need that like counteraction to your ego, so that way you like keep hitting the shed and you keep getting the thing going, because like otherwise we're like, something that you said, and I was gonna like add on earlier, was you're like, the people who have died like making this music, like we should emphasize that more. Like people literally have died like perpetuating this music. Like the plight of people of color in this country, and the way that they have like, this music was from people of color, and like, not to put it like so like harshly against like people of my own.
Yeah, it's the only indigenous music to America.
Exactly. Yeah, I would say maybe folk. But
Spawned from the blues.
yeah, right. And like we have like Western swing too, like we have that same kind of like thing. But like, yeah, so like people of color built this music, and it came from the blues, New Orleans, like this whole thing. So like people have literally died, like stuff has been on the line, like seriously, for this music. So to not take it seriously, like whether or not you are like carrying on the tradition of like bebop or a big band or the blues or like whatever, or, and then like we were talking about earlier, the other side of the coin, to not push that forward too, and like making, like doing the, because like jazz is really like a, you know, if in my young years, maybe misinformed like interpretation of things, like jazz is a snowball effect music, like where it's like we are just constantly each decade building upon it, like, you know, from like Pops to Charlie Parker to Miles Davis to,
right.
And I'm leaving so many people out, and then to like Jaco Pastorius, to Pat Metheny, to Brad Meldau, to Kurt Elling, all these people just like pushing it forward. We have to do both, otherwise, like, and we have to put in the work, and we have to do it like selflessly too. Now I'm just preaching, and I have absolutely no authority to be preaching on this, so I'll cap.
But you know, man, like that's like I feel like that's like the problem with like only having institutionally learned. You know, I've been saying this to my students, and some of them like it and some of them don't. Yeah. And you know, I guess to kind of be kind of rough about it, I don't care. Music school doesn't make your resume. You do.
Oh yeah. You know what? If you don't mind me just saying like a quick like 5-second tangent, I literally, so like once we moved into this apartment, I like put stuff up on the walls. Like these never made it up on the walls. Like these are actually still making it up onto the walls. They're just sitting on my piano. But right here is my diploma, and I graduated in 2018, and I took out of the envelope yesterday. I'd never seen it until because the diploma. I mean, yes. Does it look nice in a frame? Yes. Am I glad that I have like a physical representation of the $80,000 that I spent for my degree? Sure. But does it mean anything for me getting gigs? No. Yeah.
And like the only, and you know, once again, I think you should leave this part in, just to be honest with you. Like,
I'll leave it in, yeah.
Okay, good. Like, you know, there's a time and a place to flex academically. No problem. If you want to get an endorsement, it's either because of you are touring like heavily and selling out stadiums and making gold records. Sure. Yeah, you don't need a degree. However, for the 90% of us that do, you either need a professorship of some sort, whether it be adjunct or full-time or whatever. You need a large teaching studio maybe. You need to show that like you've either bought into their brand already, because cats are just not getting free horns unless you are Joseph Alessi designing your own horn.
Yeah.
And the other thing of it is like having once again, I got a master's degree. I was super lucky. You know, I got to study with some of the best teachers in the world, in my opinion, as well as like some of the best human beings in the world. But, you know, like,
yeah, because you were with, during your undergrad, you were with Mendoza, right? Freddie Mendoza?
I was with him for the first half.
Okay.
Then, so I went with Freddie Mendoza and Martin McCain. Man, Martin has been an invaluable mentor to me, like the past 8 years. Oh my gosh. He's like the guy who, on my website, he designed EPK. I mean, like, he like really, but yeah, I studied with Freddie and Martin. And then I moved up to Andre whenever Freddie left.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I really got to study with some of the best people in the world. I mean, I studied with Freddie Cole's guitarist, Randy Napoleon. I mean, like that guy, you know, call it what you want, but like he played with Michael Bublé. He played with Freddie Cole. He played with the Clayton Hamilton Brothers Big Band. I mean, he's played with everyone. Renee Marie. You know, I studied with Xavier Davis, Diego Rivera, Rodney Whitaker. I mean, Rodney has been Kenny Garrett's, Roy Hargrove's, Diana Krall's, Wynton Marsalis's, Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra. Not Jazz Lincoln, but Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra.
Yeah.
You know, Antonio Hart, list goes on. Mike Dease, Randy Gillespie, who was Wes Montgomery's drummer. I mean, come on. Like,
yeah.
I've been super fortunate. So like I got like a very surreal grad diploma. But like that still didn't teach me, or I shouldn't say this, like they taught me this, but like, you know, just like most people, like your degree doesn't teach you how to respond to an email on time. Your degree doesn't teach you how to get to a call time on time. Your degree doesn't teach you how to write an email. Your degree doesn't teach you how to not come off as a snob at a gig. And your degree definitely does not teach you about transparency.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I have to say I'm pretty happy like how transparent I can be. Cause like, I think people know if I just don't like something, I don't like it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the thing is like, we have to like, I think people are like, get really offended whenever like somebody doesn't like something, but that's okay.
Yeah.
That's like the objective line. If you don't like something, cool. But other people do. Like, for example, I hate mustard, mayonnaise, and ketchup and all that crap. I hate it. That stuff is disgusting. But, like, my wife loves it.
Sure.
Okay? Like, am I, you know, no, I'm not being rude. But, you know, let's just say if I, like, don't like X, Y, or Z. Okay, but other people do.
Yeah. And honestly, too, I feel like, I mean, maybe I'd feel differently if somebody like said point blank to my face, but like, I think I might like to know, like if somebody didn't like my work, and I wouldn't really take it personal. I mean, maybe at first, like because the ego in me, but maybe maybe just from being a musician in general, or being a singer and a trumpet player. Well, amateur trumpet player, I should say. You know, that like those are the two like big egotistical like horns, right? Like vocal and trumpet. So like maybe I wouldn't like it in the moment, but I feel like it almost might be better. Like I'd rather have somebody be like, yeah, I don't really dig your stuff, but know why they don't. Because if it's a style thing, then I can just attribute it to like, oh, we're like different strokes. But if it's like a technique thing, then it's like, especially, I mean, like, I think it probably goes across all ages, but especially at my age, I'd be like, oh, maybe that's something I need to take into consideration and work on.
Yeah. And see, like, man, John Whitman, he's the director of all artist relations at Yamaha. Man, this quote messed me up. Oh my gosh, I like use it today. Critique is a chance for refinement.
Ooh, that's really great, man. That's really great.
I have like kept that in mind. Actually, that's like the reason I didn't quit grad school was like that quote. Mm-hmm. I was like, whenever he said that, I could not believe it. I was like, this man just dropped three 5-story houses, man. I don't know how this translates. And like to this day, and you know, like obviously there's a difference between like critique for personal reasons versus critique for like actual artistic reasons. And like, you know, like the artistic thing is like, okay, like people probably think that I am trying to imitate Mike Dease too much. That's fine. Like, man, I'm going to leave this unnamed, but I took a lesson from somebody who was in town because they were coming to state, and we had quite a number of people come through. And I took the lesson with that person, and I honestly thought it was a waste of money. I thought that I could cut that person, no problem. And to my friends, I could. And, you know, even to maybe some of my mentors, I could. But the thing that I've actually taken away from that is actually we're like really good friends now. Or not really good friends, but like, you know, like we talk. We've actually had like Zoom hangs. Sure. Like that person and I took a lesson with that person. I was just like, I don't know what this is. It wasn't for me. But man, like to me, that is like the point of like having critique is like you're supposed to indulge one another. And I honestly like I hate to be so exaggerated about this, but like I like do not dig that person's playing. It to me is just like I'm not into it, and vice versa. But like we interact on Facebook, we're cool, and like we've had like Zoom hangs.
Yeah.
What?
Well, it's like it's that's like to me the epitome of I guess like having respect for the individual and not vibing because
because both of us are working. Like both of us were working.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's not a big deal. Honestly, I think it's a style thing. It's not even an attitude thing. Because I actually, like, moment I get like a notification from Messenger, I like get back like real quick.
Yeah.
And so, you know, like it's probably a style thing, and that's cool. Like whatever, you know.
You want to talk about vibe? When we were playing that gig on Sunday, Art was the guitar player. And we had a 12-foot radius. We had a velvet rope go around, so we had a 12-foot radius where nobody could come by for safety. And everybody was wearing masks that could wear masks. And then the horn players, like I would sing the head, and then I'd put my mask back on, and the horn player would pull down theirs. And what am I doing? Justifying how safe we were on the podcast. But no. So this little like 4-year-old girl like wandered behind the band setup and turned off Art's amp. So it was like the ultimate vibe. Like she didn't flip the switch, but she saw like the knob. She just wanted to turn the knob, and she turned them all the way down. It was so funny, man.
Jeez. Oh my gosh.
It was hilarious, man. We were like, yep, that's like, they were like, it's been 5 months since we've had a gig, and this is you know, the vibe. The vibe is constant. But, so like, man, you're releasing shit like crazy. Like I'm a couple things come to mind. Like one, I'm jealous, and two, it's like the money for all these projects, man, because like putting out records is an expensive ordeal. But like, sorry, you go ahead.
No, I was just saying it is.
Yeah. So the one of the things I wanted to talk about was like, we're plugging Realization, which we've talked about a good bit, but we also haven't talked about Reimagined, right? So, man, one of the things about that was I was like, okay, well, let me look up like the cats who are on the record because I haven't heard it yet because it hasn't come out yet. And then so I looked up Luther S. Allison, right? Which at first I typed in Luther Allison, and I was like,
yeah. He has like, it has to be that. If not, you won't find him.
Yeah. So I was like Luther S. Allison, and I was like, oh shit, I've already heard this guy play. I heard him play on the live stream of Terremoto Coffee with Benny the other night, like because Benny's a friend of mine. Next week.
Yep.
Yeah, dude. I was like, oh, dude, this dude is really killing. So then I went and looked him up, and I was like, okay, so like multi-instrumentalist, and like when people say multi-instrumentalist, like sometimes like maybe inappropriately so, like maybe it's just the imposter syndrome in me, but I was like, I try not to say multi-instrumentalist because of the fact that I feel like my soloing chops on my trumpet aren't as great. So I saw that like he was on Father Figure, the 2016 Dease album, on drums, and then I like read that he was on the 2018 Reaching Out record. He was on piano, and I was like, wait, what? And then I listened to the record, and I listened to Reaching Out first, and I was like, okay, he sounds killing. And I was like, surely he's gonna sound like not that great on drums because like drums are hard. And so then I went and listened to that, and I listened to all the tracks, like little bits from all the tracks, and I was like, no, this guy's killing. So yeah, man, tell me about Luther and like where you guys got connected with.
Yeah, Luther's my boy. I like talk trash to that boy and man all the time.
Yeah, man, tell me about that. So I mean, like, and not like this is a like oh yeah, the connective thread thing. Like, if anything, it's just like amazing that like he's surrounded by so many people. But I noticed that like with him and Zach, is it Adelman? Adelman. So I noticed between like the two of them is like they report on like Dease stuff, and then like you obviously like he's your mentor. So I assume is that how like you guys all got connected?
Yeah. So actually no. So how Luther and I got connected was through a completely different strain. So like first off, Luther's like my boy. I love that guy. Like I like FaceTime him. I don't call him, I FaceTime him.
Yeah.
Like he was actually in my wedding party. Like I love that guy.
Cool.
That's my boy. And so anyways though, so Luther knows Martin McCain because Martin's wife lived in Memphis, right? And because, you know, she's a piano pedagogy or it's either piano professor or piano pedagogy professor. I'm not sure. But anyways, so she teaches out there, right? And so they have a house out there. So Martin commutes. And so Martin plays in this Memphis Jazz Orchestra. And Luther studied at University of Tennessee, which is in Knoxville, which is like 2 hours away. But Luther studied with one of Art Blakey's pianists, Donald Brown.
Okay.
Donald Brown he's bad. I actually got to meet him. He's super nice because Luther works at Brevard as well. But anyways, and that's how him and Dease met. So Luther met Martin at this gig, and it was like 2017 in April or May. And so Martin's like, oh yeah, man, what's up? You know, because like Martin's just like such a wonderful person. Oh my gosh. He's so cool. And so Luther was like, oh, hey, what's up? You know, I'm Luther, super nice guy. And so they meet and he's like, yeah, man. So, you know, like, what's like the deal? And he's like, oh man, I'm actually leaving town. I'm moving to Michigan, go to Michigan State for my grad school degree. He's like, oh man, that's killing, man. You'll meet one of my former students, Altin. I was like, okay, cool. So he was like, okay, cool. Yeah. So he found me on Instagram, followed me, And I was like, oh, cool. And then I friended him on Facebook. And then I saw his announcement going to Michigan State, and he saw mine. We both commented. We were like, oh, watch out, like, see you there, blah, blah, blah. And so I went by, like Luther's into fitness. And at the time I was like working out a lot as that went down the drain. But anyways, so, we were like, oh man, yeah, in the gym today, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then, so we would finally meet each other in Michigan. So I had a house. And so I was engaged whenever I went to grad school. And so Marina and I, we bought like a $1,200 pair of washer and dryer, like the Samsung decked out one, because we had a house. And so Luther was like, oh yeah, I just got to find a place to do laundry. I was like, oh man, just come over here. Like, don't pay for laundry. That's stupid.
Yeah, sure.
And so he came over like, oh, what's up, man? Like, and so we started talking, we started hanging out. Then school started, we were just like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. Started talking, and we eventually got really close. And then one day, Professor Dease was like, oh yeah, meet Luther. I was like, oh, I already know Luther. He's like, oh, you guys are like cool already? I was like, yeah. He was like, oh, dig. And so Luther and I like get really, really, really close throughout grad school. And so like he would like come over, do laundry. He like loves my dog, Navy. And so, like super, super cool. And so he would always come over, or we would always be in class together. And so eventually whenever we went to Brevard, we got really close. We started like hanging out even more. But here's like the thing that like really brought it together was like, so I was like, okay, so I want to like do these things this year. I like wrote down a list. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to like have more gigs. I'm going to do this. I'm going to write for this. I'm going to do all this. And so come to find out, my Professor Dease took a sabbatical for the fall of 2018, because he had just got tenure and they had a baby, and so he could like do it, and it was like perfect for him. And so I taught Improv 1, but Luther taught the piano class for Improv 1, because he had two TA duties, piano and then drums, from what I remember. And so Luther and I had to basically sit down and be like, all right, we got to like do this. And so man, we just worked so much together, and then we started playing a lot more because we were like in Octet 1 and JO1. And then, we would always like, man, he's like absurdly good at every single computer game there is, like with like mini golf and all that. And so he would just always talk trash. Oh my gosh. And so, we hung out so much. And then, come down the line, we like move away, and then, we like see less of each other, but then I'm like, oh, come down to Austin for like a couple of days, so that way whenever I get married, you can play. And so he came down and toured, and like we've just been super cool ever since. But like Luther's just like one of those people, like you just like love him. He's super cool, super cool. And then Zach, same thing, same exact thing. We just got super close as we worked together. Zach's on the Realization album. He's on Reimagined. Zach's actually on this new single that Chris and I released a couple of days ago on Bolivia.
Yeah, right. Dude, I was gonna mention that too. Is like, dude, like, and then you like took it upon yourself to like do that, where you were like the Sencalar Glassman Quintet, like doing that Solitude sessions thing, man. It's like,
yeah, and we got 4 things down the line on that.
Oh, dude. Yeah. I mean, just that's the epitome of the hustle, man, is like just figuring out like how even in stuff like this. And I mean, I've done like a few things, like me and David did God Bless the Child. And then me and Marco did a thing on Joe Beam tune called Strada Branca. And then, and then I'm actually doing a remote big band record under a guy's named Stephen Force. But like, those are mostly just like kind of sidemen things or small things of just like a tune or two and just doing a video. But like the fact that you guys are really like putting that hustle in of promoting the quintet's name and getting stuff out is just, I mean, a testament to.
And so, there's like 2 main reasons for that actually. So like number 1, our guitarist, Nathan, he is an expert sound engineer. I mean, this guy won the Downbeat Award for Best Sound Engineer using like the student downbeat, whatever stuff. Like he beat everybody, including the USC folks, the Miami folks, like all those guys, the NYU folks, using a bootleg version of Logic. A bootleg version. Like, this is how good this cat is at mixing and guitar, obviously. I mean, he's bad. And so, Nathan and Chris are roommates in Michigan. And so I was like, Chris, like, you have a microphone, I have a microphone. And then I just upgraded, cause I have two mics. I have a talk mic that I have this playing mic. And so Nathan has like, I don't know, basically has a whole studio. And so, for my birthday, I upgraded my interface to an 8-channel interface. And then Zach upgraded his interface. Luther did too. We all got these mics. We didn't spend too much, but we spent a fair amount. Brandon Rose, the bassist, he's always been into recording, so he's had it for a while. So, yeah. And then Addison Fry, he has his stuff too. And so we were like, man, we should just do this. And so Chris and I were like, well, listen, everybody's like struggling, I've been really fortunate. I have like 25 students that I teach, and then Chris has like students too, but I didn't get unemployment. I actually got rejected like 3 times. And so I was like, all right, well, we'll see. But Marina, luckily she has a good job. And then, Chris got unemployment because he actually got coronavirus. So he definitely got, yeah. But this was like back in April. And so I was like, Chris, like once he got better, I was like, Chris, listen, man, so we have all these reviews coming out, but like nothing in sight. And like the thing is, we know how to do this stuff already. So like I've always known how to use Final Cut Pro, and I already knew how to record. Okay. Chris always learns like how to do graphic design stuff and all that stuff. And then Nathan has always been an expert sound engineer. Then the guy in Michigan named Jim Alfredson, he's like, little story, we mixed and mastered our album in his basement.
Oh, cool.
Like everything. Every little thing as far as like mixing and mastering. Like Jim is like this ridiculous B3 Hammond player. Like him and like Red Young like know each other really well. And so, we were like, all right, we can ask Jim to master it and have Nathan mix it because, Nathan needs some like recording credits because he has a bunch of guitar credits and he's a professor, but he was like, well, I also like need some like recording credits. So I was like, okay, cool, fair. So you just mix all of it because he already knows how we sound. He's our guitarist. And so we were like, okay, here's what we should do. So we did Bolivia, we did Stardust, then we did an original from Nathan, and then we're going to do like a Christmas tune.
Cool.
And then Chris so here's like the surprise, I guess. So like Chris is actually making 2 big band recordings. I'm playing lead on them. And one of them is featuring Kurt. And then one of them is featuring Kurt Elling. And then one of them is featuring Rodney Whitaker's daughter.
Back up.
Yeah.
Back up.
Yeah.
So Chris is doing a big band thing.
Yeah. 2 things, and it's Ulysses Owens. He's the producer. And then it's Kurt Elling on one of them. And the band is like, I'm playing lead trombone. Chris is doing the writing of the bass trombone stuff. Then there's 2 other people, Gina Benalcazar, and then I can't remember the other person. And then this cat named Walter White, who...
Not the drummer.
No, Walter White, the trumpet player.
Okay.
And he was like one of the first lead players with the Jazz Lincoln Center. He's ridiculous. I mean, I would honestly say he's one of the top 5 trumpet players in the world. Lives in Detroit. Yeah. He was Maynard's lead player. And then, and so also on there is Ulysses Owens, Rodney Whitaker, Luther, what's it called? Another cat. I think it's either Anthony Stanko or it's somebody else. But anyways, it's a stacked big band and we're doing it all remote. Right. But Chris didn't want that to get into the way of like our stuff. So we were like, okay, we have to strategically plan this. And so a good friend of ours, Nick Finzer, who was like a monster on social media. I mean, he's amazing. He's also a great trombonist. I mean, super nice cat too. Lives up the road in Denton. We both took lessons from him last year about like content creating. He was like, listen, if you really like want to do this, you have to have a content schedule and know exactly what you're going to post. So the reason why we only posted a picture at first was because if you put too many words, people don't read it until it gets a lot of traction. Yeah. Okay. Then the other thing was we only put 1 hashtag. So then it was like, it gave a, it gave like a lingering thing. And then on Instagram, the day before it released, we released a no sound video, and it was like 5 seconds. And people were like, "Oh, is there supposed to be sound?" And it's like we didn't answer.
Yeah.
You know, and so like those are like things that like nobody like tells you about. You know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we really started like, okay, let's do this. And so we also applied to GIN, International Trombone Association. And so with all this being said, we wanted to put this into the future because we had so many other things coming down the line. So for example, All About Jazz reviewed our record, came out great. We were in Stereophile Magazine, came out really good too. We were actually reviewed with Ambrose. And so Ambrose got 4.5 stars and we got 4 stars. So it was really good. And actually within that, I have to brag about this. This is like my favorite thing in the world. Tom Conrad is like a really well-known critic, and he loves trombone. And so Dease sent us his contact info, and I sent him one. Okay, took him like 21 days to get the freaking CD because of USPS, but that's another story. Anyways, and so in that review, he says, Sencalar and Glassman sound like 21st century prodigy grandchildren of J.J. Johnson and Kai Winding.
Ooh.
And whenever he said that, I was like, all right, today I can brag. Like,
yeah, you've done it. You've done what you set out to do.
No, I don't think anybody's gotten that quote. I mean, seriously. And so I had to like take a step back. I was like, all right, Chris, listen, man, we don't suck. And this is like where imposter syndrome comes in. I was like, Chris, you know, like we don't suck, man. Like this is in a magazine. We were reviewed next to Ambrose, somebody who's much higher caliber than us. Like he's on Blue Note, you know? And so I was like, listen, we have something to say. We should put it out. And so we did. And so now every single month, the first Friday of every month until the end of the year, we have a new video coming out. And it's been so I did the original design of the album. I did all that. Chris did the videos. Nathan did all the mixing. And we all did it from home.
Man.
And then I did one arrangement, Chris did the other. Then we co-wrote an arrangement on Nathan's original that we're releasing in November. New York City Jazz Record just reached out to us a couple weeks ago asking about our October schedule and if we had anything coming out. And so, you know, right now what we're doing is like, because everything is like so weird, like we're basically capitalizing on everybody's, I don't want to say freeness or everybody's like availability, but we're capitalizing by making sure that like we're, number one, we're paying people. Like we're not asking for free work. No, we don't do that. But, and you know, like the thing is like, there's nothing wrong with asking for a favor occasionally. Like that is what, you know, like there's a new record that just came out and it's a big band record and it features Rick Margitza, Wayne Bergeron, what's it called? Alex Foster, Dave Taylor, Conrad Herwig, and Chris and I are playing lead and bass trombone on it. We didn't get paid too much money for it, but paid off.
Yeah.
The accolades. So, you know, like nothing wrong with asking for a favor, but you know, like we're like really trying to make sure we're taking care of cats, you know, like they're like cool. And like, we're also trying to at least keep people on their feet because, you know, the worst thing that you can do is like come out with an album and then like, okay, what's next? I don't know.
Yeah. Right.
You know, like an album.
Like tour it or play it at some gigs or something like that, have some stuff to back it up. So that way it's not just like an isolated incident.
Well, and also like, you know, you have a website, you may as well keep bringing people onto it. And like, you know, like I have Final Cut Pro in Logic, you know, like I got really good with it. Chris has the Adobe suite. Nathan uses Logic and like, you know, we're really good at all this stuff, you know, like we know how to use it.
Yeah.
And so, well, like we're doing basically what we would pay somebody else to do. Let's learn how to use it. So like all this summer, we just learned how to use it. We've just been like trying to like keep on top of like our following per se. And honestly, the other thing is like, you know, Chris and I, like we get a lot of opportunities to play with some fantastic people, but like at the end of the day, it's normally not like 2 trombonists being on like the front like line. And so because of that, it's also kind of like an ego thing. Like, we have a right to be here too. It's not just like there's room for, somebody told me there's room for everybody at the front, I guess it was. So like, if like there's room for you, it'll be made. And if not.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. Man, releasing so much stuff. So you got Realization, which came out in January, right? Okay. So, and then like where can people, because I want to make sure to like myself facilitate your plug, so that way you don't have to do all the plugging. So where can people find Realization? Like, do you have physical copies too?
Okay, we're actually almost out.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, so we maybe have like 25 left.
Okay, cool. Well, you heard it here first, folks. Like, get your copy now.
And I'm really happy about that, because not that it's a mistake, but I ordered 500 of my first CD and I still have 300. Yeah. And so, that's the thing. But it's also on every single streaming platform: YouTube, Apple Music, iTunes, Spotify, all that stuff. And then it's on our website. It's on Bandcamp.
Yeah, I was about to say too. Like, I know for certain reasons people want it on like iTunes and stuff like that, Amazon, to like buy, so you can see like how many people have bought on those big websites. But and I don't know how you would prefer people to, but I would say like man, those first Fridays on Bandcamp, where the fees are waived. Like,
it's actually discounted on Bandcamp. So we sold it for $20 for the physical CD, and here's why. The painting, the cover art on the painting is a $40,000 painting. Woo. And we got the rights to it. And the person who painted it was Sunrise trombonist Dick Griffin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's a very personal thing.
Yeah.
It's called Round Midnight.
Oh.
Oh, huh?
Yeah.
But normally around midnight, or like in the late hours, you have a realization.
Sure.
So
that's nice. Yeah. That all works together. That's really nice.
A very cathartic looking painting. It's like red, green, yellow, midnight blue, black, like grayish blue, and like in the center it forms like a T almost.
Yeah. Man, that's really nice. Yeah, no, so I mean, with my record, whenever I'm trying to plug my record, I hope that people on those first Fridays go to Bandcamp, because that way you get the most profits out of it, right? Because they waive their fees. So would you agree that the same way?
Yeah, please go to Bandcamp. If you just type in Realization, it'll be there. Let me see. Also, our Solitude sessions, Bolivia's on there for $1.50. And actually, whenever everything's done in December, we're going to sell it for $5 for a 4-tune EP.
Oh, cool. Yeah. And so another thing that I do is on the bottom of the screen, right? I should say right now, look at the bottom of the screen. You'll see like all of the links and everything. So that way people
covers.
Huh?
I have like the high-res album covers for you.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I'll flash those so that way people can know exactly where to go and get them.
And so, we have it on our website. You can also just message us on our Facebook page, the Sencalar Glassman Quintet, or Instagram, Sencalar Glassman Quintet 1. And then our website, www.sencalarglassmanquintet.com.
Great. And then let's see, this episode will air on September 24th. So then now, tomorrow, I mean, it's like we're recording this on the 8th, several weeks. But tomorrow, listeners, go and check out. So Reimagined is going to be released. Where can people find that? Same places?
Yeah, all the same places, including my website, altinsencalarmusic.com. But also, it's really important that I kind of give a little bit of the backstory.
Yep.
So like Reimagined, it was originally named Reintroduction. However, there's a saying that was told to me by a band director of mine: you never get a second chance at a first impression.
Sure.
And so like that stuck with me. So I was like, no, not Reintroduction. And so Reimagined really encapsulates, in my opinion, or like what I hope to be indicative of, is like both where I've studied, where I've come from, what my main focus is, and who I want to sound like, as well as like what I want to be like in the future. And so it really tries to capture that post-bop, neo-bop-ish kind of thing, along with like having the classic 2 feel, and then like a, not like a through composed melody, but you know, something that's not as ordinary as you would say, or
Sure.
ordinary as you would hear. And so, you know, the reason why I got for young cats is because, you know, we're like, I don't want to say the pillars, because then that's giving like a limited amount, but you know, like we're like a part of the generation that will hopefully be holding this music up and lifting it even higher. And so I called it Reimagined because not only are we in a experimental time, but like, you know, we are truly having to reimagine how we do things, you know.
Yeah.
You can't just say, see you at the gig.
Right.
So, you know, and so, you know, actually it'll be released tomorrow. And so since tomorrow's September 25th, it will be also played at my trio gig at Guadalupe Brewing Company, which will be live streamed, as well as on my quintet and Matt Maldonado's quintet date at Monks on the 29th.
Okay. Awesome.
Monks. And let me just make sure. Yeah, the 29th for the Austin Jazz Society Project Safety Net. We're going to be premiering this as well. So, you know, I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, and every single time that I mention it in every intro, I plug Colin, and I plug Monks, and I plug Austin Jazz Society. But not to, you know, sound like a broken record, but thank you, Austin Jazz Society. You guys are doing the most for jazz musicians in Austin. So, yeah, man.
I think we've all benefited from it in some way or some form. But definitely, yeah. So, you know, we're going to be doing that. And that's actually going to feature like 5 of, you know, some of the, I guess, newer generation, which is like myself, Matt Maldonado, Alex Brown, Damian Garcia, and Dan Dufour.
Dude,
yeah.
What a freaking lineup, man.
The thing is like, I've played with that band for so long. I mean, that's like my octet group as well as like the same band I use for quintet and quartet and stuff. So like, you know, I've been playing with Matt for 8 years. So like, you know, it's going to be a cool hang.
Yeah, man. What a cool hang. Well, then, yeah, I'll make sure to plug in the intro for the Monk Show and then put the link right here as well. Man, so I think we hit it all. Reimagined, realization, and then the Solitude sessions. Man, I'm sure it'll probably be like a month later, and you'll be like, yeah, another record coming out in the middle of quarantine, man. Dude, man, I want to be respectful of your time, too. It's been about 2 hours, so, man, thanks so much for coming on. Let's make the hang soon. Believe it or not, I have a lot of stuff, actually, relatively a lot of stuff coming through where there might be some more gigs in the foreseeable future in a safe capacity. So I'll give you a call for those, and hopefully we'll be at Bandstand soon.
Let me know if my personnel is allowed.
Will do, man. All right, man. Have a great night. Thank you so much for coming on, and congratulations on all the records again, man. And I'll see you soon.
Thanks, man.
Man, I'm sorry that we didn't get to it before. I don't know how it slipped my mind, but yeah, the way that we end the show is that we just ask like the gig from hell story. So if you can think of what your craziest gig from hell is, what would it be?
Yeah. Okay, I do have one. So this involved. There's a band in town named Memphis Train Review, and it was like probably in 2016 or maybe it's probably 2016, and so there was this new bar at the time in San Antonio off of 1604 called Pix.
Okay,
and it was cool, you know, like it was like a new bar for us to play, so it wasn't as like a stagnant, because you know most of the time we would do Friday, Saturday, Sunday, make a lot of money.
Sure.
And it was. However, this particular gig, the sound, you know, of course it starts with the sound guy, and it also ends with the sound guy. But the sound guy was just I don't know, man. Maybe it was like his like last night there or something. I have no clue. To this day, I still don't know. But you know, we start with the gig, and and so I have like a wireless microphone. I think Matt does, and so does Justin Smith at the time. And we have like these really nice microphones. So you're like they're actually truly wireless. Like we don't have a belt pack.
Sure.
Like it's truly wireless, which is like, you know, really, really innovative. And so they're AMTs, and they're fantastic. And the sound guy had like never heard of the company before. So that was like my first indication. It was like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, so where's your belt packs? And we had to like explain to him like 3 times, like, oh, we don't actually need belt packs. Like this is like a truly wireless. He was like, yeah, I get that. So where are the belt packs?
Oh no.
And so whenever we showed him how it connected, he was like, oh wow, it's like Bluetooth. I was like, yeah, you know, it's wireless. And he was like, oh, okay, cool. Okay, so that was like indication number 1. Indication number 2, he like couldn't figure out which I guess fader to pull up for the lead vocals. So like basically all you heard were like background vocals.
Oh my lord.
And it's like 3-part harmony, you know, like singing like Shaka Khan stuff, or like singing Earth, Wind, Fire, or Tower Power. So it was like, you know, sounded like hearing second tenor and second alto together on the Thad Jones chart. You know, and that, I mean, it was killing that they were killing the part like that, but that's not what people hear. Yeah. So people were like sharing mics, and so we have this drummer, or Memphis Train has this drummer named Will, and Will's just like, man, Will's like such a cool guy, but he's also like one of the most passionate people like I've ever met. And so like whenever like something is not going right, like Will is absolutely like devastated, and like he just this man has no chill. Yeah. And I love him to death. Because like, man, like this man is like all about the best product possible, which is awesome. And so he like talks to the sound guy. And so we have like a mediator in the band as well, because sometimes Will gets a little too aggressive, and like that's okay. And so Mark Grossman, wonderful human being, guest appearance by my wife, was like, okay, I'll talk to him, Will, don't worry. And so he was like, all right, cool, man. And he's not having it. So the second set goes along, same problem, just complete trash as far as the sound is concerned. Except this time he can't get the horn mics to turn on from his end. And so now you just basically hear like snare, bass, piano, and like background vocals, and like that's it. And he's like, oh, well, y'all are horn players, y'all don't need mics anyways. And it's like, okay, guy. And so, and then one thing led to another, and I guess the sound guy was just like taking shots, like shot after shot after shot. Like this guy just, he did not care. That's cool, you know. Everybody has like their YOLO moments, whatever. And so my man, second to third set, Will has to like leave the venue. He's like, I can't do this right now. So we talked to the sound guy. We're like, hey, is everything like cool? You know, like we're like trying to be level headed. But like really, like I know like Justin, Matt, and I, we were like, man, what is this like? Yeah. You know, like I can work this soundboard. And so so after the break, he's like, okay, yeah, I'll get it dialed in. The dude is like so incoherent before the third set, like he may as well be asleep, drunk or something. So then. Towards like the end of the third set, he just basically like moves the switches. I don't know, like I forget what I saw him do, but like he just moves the switches. Everything's all out of whack, and he's like standing in his booth, like standing up, and he's like giving us the finger. Whoa! And I'll never forget, Will legitimately was gonna get an assault charge that night. I mean, it was ready. And so, man, we packed up. We were like, all right, we're out. Like, I'm out. And I will never forget that this guy had to get taken off of the sound man post and, like, basically taken to his car and, like, lay down in his car so that way somebody could take him home.
Oh, my God. So like, did he like? So you said he like flipped the faders? Was he just like, fuck it, and just like,
Hoopla.
oh my Jesus Christ,
And
that
he
is
legitimately,
so funny.
he was flipping the entire band off. I'll never forget that.
Was anybody in the band like not amicable, or he was just belligerent probably at that point?
Yeah, I mean, he was done.
Dude, big
Yeah.
old yikes.
He had like a beer next to like, and it's cool if you want to have a drink on the gig. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Oh man, this cat had the drinks on the gig.
Well, cool, man. Well, I thank you for coming back on. I feel bad. I've kept Lydia. Every time I do these, I'm like, yeah, like you still do like whatever you need to do around the house, but I just try to keep it like a little bit quieter. So I'll go and free her to be able to enjoy her evening. But thanks, man, for coming back on and giving us 3 stories.
Yeah, and so I'll send you I'll send you that video.
Okay, cool, man.